Good morning. I'm going to call to order this regular meeting of the Zoning and Planning Committee for this Thursday, June 21st. My name is Jeremy Schrader, and I am the chair of this committee. With me at the dais are council members Ellison, Bender, Reich, Goodman, and Gordon. Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. We have 4 items on today's agenda. Before going into our hearing, we'll handle the consent agenda, which is items 2 through 4. Number 2 is the approval of applications for a street vacation and an alley vacation for HCM Architects for the East Side Storage Project on 26.5th Avenue Northeast and University Avenue Northeast. Number 3 is approving an application submitted by Douglas Lopinto to rezone the southern portion of the property located at 208 Oliver Avenue South from an R1A single-family district to an R2B two-family district to allow the construction of a 2-family dwelling. And number 4 is referring to staff the subject matter of an ordinance amending Title 20, Chapter 551 of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances related to the zoning code, overlay districts, amending regulations related to signs. Is there any discussion for any of these items, or would anyone like to pull any of these items off? Not seeing anything. I will move items 2 through 4. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. We'll now move to number 1, which is a quasi-judicial hearing concerning the appeal submitted by Collaborative Design Group regarding the decision of the Planning Commission's conditions of approval for number 4 and 5 to site plan review, approving the construction of a community center located at 1319 and 1349 Penn Avenue North and 2210 Plymouth Avenue North in an OR2 high-density office residential district. We'll start with the staff presentation.
Thank you. Good morning. The project is the North Point expansion. So presently on the site is the North Point Health and Wellness Clinic and North Point Inc., which includes the food shelf, and then the Estes Funeral Home at the south end of the site. We've had a number of applications recently at the intersection of Penn and Plymouth to allow for the redevelopment of the area, including some CPED owned or previously owned properties. So in 2016, the city of Minneapolis approved the Thor development here at the southeast corner of Penn and Plymouth. Last year, we approved the Estes project to move the existing funeral home from the subject site that we're reviewing today south to the southwest corner. And that's all to allow for the expansion of the North Point facility. This has been, I think, a little over 10 years in the making. And so we're happy to bring the applications for you today for review. So at the City Planning Commission on May 21st, the Planning Commission adopted staff findings and approved the following applications. Essentially, we have setback requirements along front yard setback requirements, along Penn Avenue, Plymouth Avenue, and Queen Avenue, which adds additional constraint in the OR2 district because they have greater setbacks and greater side yards. And then there's also a corner side yard setback along 14th Avenue North. Primarily, the variances were to allow for parking lot encroachments. And so those were, for the majority, approved, and the applicant was satisfied with those conditions of approval. However, for the site plan review application, there were 2 conditions of approval that the applicant has appealed, and those are essentially the purview of the appeal for today. So I've highlighted them in red, and then we'll look at the site plan and the floor plan so we can kind of really hone in on specifically what the appeal is regarding. So condition number 4 for site plan review is that the applicant construct the first floor of the addition within right up to those front property lines. So the front property setback along Plymouth and Penn are 15 feet at each corner. And then also that the applicant shall provide a principal entrance at that corner. So if we take a look at the renderings, this is a view essentially from Queen, which would be here in Plymouth Avenue. And you can see the proposed drop-off area. They have limited parking area here and staging area. North Point as a facility has a bus where they pick up and transport individuals who are utilizing the medical and the dental clinics. And so essentially this is their drop-off area or short-term waiting, and it also provides some handicap accessible parking to limit the transportation. Most of the parking for the proposed use will be located at the Thor development, which is at the southeast corner of the intersection. The rendering that we see here at the bottom is a view from the intersection of Penn and Plymouth. So where if you're in view of the person taking this rendering, behind you would be the Thor development, and that's essentially where the majority of the parking would be located. So people will essentially come to the intersection here at Penn and Plymouth, travel underneath that second floor cantilever, and then they would travel essentially up here to the principal entrance that is located here kind of in the center of the proposed addition.
We have a quick question from
Sure.
Councilmember Gordon.
And I think maybe you did answer the question, but from that corner shot at Plymouth and Penn, there's no door, exit, or entrance at all
That is
from
correct.
the corner?
So in site plan, you can kind of see I've drawn in the path that one would take if they're coming from the Thor development, or as you know, we're establishing the C line along the Penn corridor. So there is a stop in front of the new Estes, and also there will be a northbound stop here adjacent to the Urban League, which is across the street. So if the main center for staff who will be parking at Thor, or patients parking at Thor, or those utilizing transit either along the Plymouth corridor or along Penn corridor, essentially it all kind of brings you right here to this point. So this blue line represents the pedestrian path, which would be approximately, give or take, 200 feet from that intersection as you're kind of traveling underneath that first floor. Additionally, as I mentioned, that second floor is cantilevered, and what shows here in red are the columns that travel down. Where you're seeing the columns is essentially where staff requested that the building be constructed on the first floor, and also to provide that principal entrance. So as you know, we have city policies that indicate all properties for new construction or additions. We really try hard to get buildings built up to the corner with principal entrances to allow for interaction between pedestrians in the building and to allow for views in and out. The proposed use is a community center, essentially because of the combination of uses. The majority of the uses are medical and dental, and then the food shelf will also be located on the first floor. It's located more north on the site.
Hold on for 1 second. Councilmember
Sure.
Gordon?
I just want to ask, I guess, another question. So it seems like there's two things that we're worried about. One is the entrance. So if they put a door on the inside of that wall and people then walked down a little hallway to their main reception area, that would meet the requirements for the main entrance, but wouldn't meet the requirements for moving their, I forget what I don't have it in front of me, but they're supposed to change the design of their first floor as well.
Essentially, there were two conditions of approval that were affirmed by the Planning Commission. The first one is that get an entrance at the corner of Penn and Plymouth. The second was to bring the building up to those property lines. So essentially, right now it's cantilevered above, so it would be to bring the first floor all the way down. So it'd be 15 feet from Plymouth, 15 feet from Penn.
I see. So if they were able to put a door, see where the pink line is, where it's outside?
Yes.
If you just put a door and created a little hallway on the inside, they would meet one of those conditions.
That's right. And presently, this space is outdoors.
Right.
It just is under a gallery space.
Or the other option would be to build the building out a little further and make that inside a hallway. Because it's a principal entrance. It isn't the principal entrance, correct?
You're exactly right. And that's essentially what the staff recommendation was trying to achieve, is that we would have conditioned space at the corner with an entrance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anything further. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Sure, just one question if I don't see any others from my colleagues. If from Planning Commission, I know we talked at length about this, and I know that we were hoping that this would be worked out. Can you describe, how much have you interacted, with the appellant?
Sure. We've had a couple telephone conversations, and we meet regularly with CPED and Public Works staff and several of the entities involved, including Collaborative Design Group, Thor previously, and also with Hennepin County to talk through the different components, being that there's so many major developments here at this intersection. So we regularly meet. We met this last Monday. We had asked if there were planned, what if the appeal were to be denied, and essentially they would have to go back to their drawing board on some of the things. I think the applicants can, of course, speak to the issue in greater detail, but right now where you're kind of seeing the two main entry points in this this floor plan are kind of at the north and south, which provide a spine through the site. To provide another entrance here would likely require at least another information desk or security desk within the building.
Okay, thanks. And I'll be following up with the appellant too, just trying to have an idea of if they put some work into figuring out other options.
I think certainly they could answer that even better. We have not heard of any sort of additional plans if the appeal were to be denied.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much.
All right, not seeing any other questions. And before I open the public hearing, I'll give the appellant a chance to speak to the committee. Do you have a representative from the project? If you could state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Stella Whitney West, and I'm the CEO for North Point Health and Wellness Center. And my address, my residential address.
Yes, please.
I live in St. Paul, 209 Sherburne.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So, and I've been the CEO for North Point Health and Wellness Center for 11 years. So this project has been on my desk for all those 11 years as well. So one of the things that I want to emphasize, because it's been described as a community center. We are a community health center. We are a federally qualified health center. We also have a nonprofit that provides social services, youth programs. In fact, our Breathe Free North youth program has been here several times before you. We have medical, dental, behavioral health. We have an on-site pharmacy. We have a laboratory as well. We serve over 28,500 patients annually, over 100,000 visits. We are actually the largest community health center in Hennepin County in the city of Minneapolis, and we are the second largest in the state of Minnesota. There are 17 federally qualified health centers in the state of Minnesota. So I wanted to make sure that that you had that picture. Over 90% of our patients and clients are from communities of color. About a third of them do not speak English, and our staff reflects the community that we serve. Our community board, our governing board, also reflects the patients and the clients that we serve. 60% of our board members are patients of our health center as well. So we have actually accepted a number of the staff recommendations, but this is one that we felt very strongly about. Having a grand, as I call it, entrance to our health center is important. It's important for the welcoming environment that we create for our patients and our clients. Wayfinding is extremely important. As our health center gets larger, we have to pay special attention to that to make sure that our patients and clients get to where they need to go, making sure that they are greeted in a welcoming environment. Having a secondary entrance would be one that would provide an extra burden in terms of staffing, security. It would also be enclosed. One of the things that we are really proud about with this grand entrance is that we have landscaping. It's a covered entryway that leads to that grand entrance as well. And we think that it allows for our patients and clients to have that peaceful entry into our center. Creating that secondary entrance means that we lose that as well, in addition to requiring additional staffing, security, and challenge for our patients and clients in terms of wayfinding. So in terms of the technical, architectural components of our project, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bill Hickey, who can explain that for you. Are there any questions for me?
No, thanks.
Thank you.
This is usually the most complicated part of the meeting. Thank you. Council members, thank you. To build on what Shanna and Stella both have mentioned, we've been at this for quite a while. Over 10 years, with the last 4 years being in great earnest as this has come to fruition. 4 years ago, this was the community board's general concept. We've worked extensively with staff since then to revise the design, to revise the planning, to pull traffic out of the neighborhood, the residential neighborhood, to improve the frontage along Plymouth Avenue, and to make a better installation there. We do have some hardship though, because we have an existing 60,000 square foot clinic that not only will stay, but also has to stay in operation during all of this. The existing building comes with a defined central corridor circulation area that divides the different medical discipline blocks and allows circulation between them. We have to connect into that because those existing medical blocks stay again in operation. We also have the issue of the existing floor level of the building is actually 3.5 feet above the level of the street at Penn and Plymouth. The Penn Avenue actually slopes up as you go to the north substantially. So it's an issue to be able to come into the building and to have usable space, to be able to go anywhere, to be able to connect into those existing blocks. To add some further complication, there's a 1-story deep light well along much of the Penn Avenue frontage that serves the lower level of the existing building with daylight, but also is an effective moat against connections through in that area. So the resolution to this that we've worked toward is recognizing with the different ways that our clients arrive and looking for ways to not divide disciplines, divide medical blocks up. We've come to this central entrance that connects into the existing spine of the building. It allows us to simplify wayfinding. As you can imagine, our patients and clients have other things on their mind when they come here, and we want this to be a clear layout and able to work really smoothly for someone who's got that preoccupation, or children, or all these things. So to provide that access for those that do arrive on foot, we have a colonnade, as has been described, along the front of the building, heavily landscaped, very pleasant space coming up, but it is a ramp. It provides transition for that 3.5 feet up to the existing floor level that we have to have. It also then brings folks who arrive by car, Uber, taxi, Metro Mobility, and pedestrians all together in one spot. There is one entrance for everyone. We do have down at that corner, there are exits actually and entrances for staff, but they are not for patients and clients.
Quick question on that. How many are you projecting to be dropped off at the main entrance by, Uber and other transportation?
We have over 1,000 visits daily to our clinic. Most of them do come by mobile taxi, a few less by bus. And so I would say at least 70% or more. Health plans do pay for that transportation for our patients, and so many of them come in taxis or health transport vehicles because it is provided for by their health insurance.
Okay, thank you.
Just to build on that, again, this allows centralization of the patient experience, but also for staff, for security. With a medical facility, we're always on the alert for being able to keep an eye on folks coming in, patients coming in, making sure parents can manage children when there's autos, things like that. And so pulling everyone into the central entrance seemed the best way to work through these grade and existing issues. Another factor for North Point is clients and patients will line up prior to opening. Significant numbers, as you can see. It's for those who do not have an appointment, for those who have early appointments, this is a consistent experience year-round. So we need to provide shelter. The colonnade does that, and it takes folks off the street corner to do that. It doesn't force the 20 or 30 people typically daily into areas of constraint. This is a view. This would be, say, from the top of the Thor building across the street. We feel we've made that corner architecturally significant. There's a significant lantern, call it there. There's a grand entryway. It's very clear that this is where you come into the site if you are a pedestrian. Walking up is a shared experience with those arriving by car. It's a common feel. It brings everyone again to that same location. The other thing is working on sort of macro scale. We have observed that on Plymouth Avenue, all the other major buildings, institutional or residential, have mid-block entries. There are no corner entries. Even the Thor building does not have a corner entry. So we feel we're not out of place in that environment. In recognizing that we're dealing with some things, we think we've made an appropriate response to trying to bring folks together. Questions for me?
Any questions for my colleagues? I think I'll jump in and say I'm frankly a little surprised to see you here with an appeal. I mean, a planning commissioner is a long discussion about this, but we didn't hear as in the depth that you've given here. So thank you for that. That's very helpful to see that. I think there was actually a little more talk about how you were using the parking lots, and I think we voted to approve your suggestions on those. So I think that in the future, it's good to have this kind of detail. Would have been helpful during planning commission. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
And with that, I will now open the hearing to the public. Please limit your comments to 2 minutes per person, which will be tracked by the counter over by the clerk. Would any member of the public like to speak? Anybody here to speak? All right. And with that, I'm seeing no one. I'm going to now close the hearing. Councilmember Ellison.
I just wanted to speak actually just wanted to move to approve the appeal. I think that, especially with regards to the rest of the corridor having mid-block entries and some of the concerns, especially my experience growing up in the area around the busyness of this intersection and the way that people wait. I think that picture of folks waiting outside, I think it would stress me out to see those long lines right along Plymouth and Penn. And so to have a space where folks can wait if they're going to be showing up early to their appointments seems like it makes a lot of sense to me. I know that, we like to have the entrances be as accessible as possible, but I think that with that 3.5 feet incline and some of the other concerns raised, I think this makes sense. And so I just wanted to move approval of the appeal.
Thank you. Any other council members have any questions or comments? Councilmember Gordon?
Well, I can see both sides of this issue. I guess I just want to speak a little bit briefly to the other side because I don't want to leave the impression that we think on our main streets it makes sense to have drop-off areas and parking spaces and keep main entrances away from corners. This is something I've had to deal with in the Second Ward with the University of Minnesota, a hospital, other institutions where they suddenly think our main streets are really their back door because they're more interested about kind of looking inward. And hospitals are notorious for this kind of thing, actually, because they are really worried about a secure campus and it's clean and everything and who can get in and out, and it makes some sense. But even outside the ward, if you're on Chicago and 28th, then you kind of get an understanding of what's going on at Abbott and Children's and all of that. I did appreciate that it seemed like there was an effort to pull some of the building out to get to the corner, like some of the earlier drawings showed even less regard for Plymouth and Penn. And I think what can happen is it can have a ripple effect down the road as more development might be coming on Plymouth. And what is it going to look like and what it's going to feel like? Maybe you'll get off the bus or somewhere down at Penn, but you actually need to go a few blocks. And so if you're going by all the surface parking areas and curb cuts so the cars are coming in and out all the time, it's not a pleasant walk and it doesn't really build the kind of walkable, complete neighborhoods that we want. I think I'll defer to the council member who looked at this, and also the fact that you did make some efforts to bring the building out closer to the corner. I could have seen a nice, secure inner hallway that wouldn't have demanded a lot of staff. That meant even in the winter you could be feeling like you're still in that beautiful courtyard that's all nicely landscaped, but you're warm as you're waiting to get into the main area. But I'm not going to push too hard on that. I hope as staff looks at future projects and they come in here, they'll remember that we do like main principal entrances on the main streets, and we want to see our buildings up there so it's a more walkable community.
Thank you. Any other council members? Councilmember Wright?
I suppose in a similar fashion, I'll echo what Councilmember Gordon said and just note that this would be inconsistent with how we've made other institutions, be it smaller, it's interesting. There's a lot of groups that will just say, nope, can't do it. This is how it's laid out. It's a better entrance. But we've kind of held our ground and said, no, you can have that entrance, but you're going to have the other one too. And so we've voted that way pretty consistently. So I'm just going to note the inconsistency, but then again, I don't know every detail of the area. And we, of course, defer to the local representative to find that deeper level of nuance. So I will defer to that, not knowing the lay of the land as well as that. But I will note the inconsistency.
Thank you for that. Any other council members? All right, well, I will jump in and kind of echo what Councilmember Gordon and Councilmember Reich said. You know, we was really hoping in the time between the Planning Commission and now that we'd be able to have a different drawing that would have a primary entrance. The map that's still up on our screens that shows the primary entrances aren't there. Each one of those an individual, I'm sure they have very good reasons for not having an entrance on the corner. I think for me, of course, deferring to the council member who knows the area and is how this will fit in. And also what's also persuasive for me is that drop, that difference and how steep that is. We're not talking inches, we're talking feet. And I think that creates a difficulty in this case. But with that, if there's seeing no other comments, I'm going to move, well, good. Councilmember Ellison has a roll. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Seeing no further business before us, we are adjourned.
Can I grab this for a moment to get a